Okay, so while I was doing a sort of a review on a 10K of metamaterial upon popular, you know, request on YouTube, on Patreon, and on Discord, apparently a bunch of trolls decided to comment on my previous MMATLP video and telling me that I don't do any math. Well, as a fellow Asian, I found deeply concerned and deeply offended by that. And things, literally my bosses hire me to do most of the math and create financial mathematical models for them. Or in the case of my new job, it's literally for SEO sort of situation. And I feel a little bit offended. But at the same time, you got me curious, like they're saying that Roller Pigeon actually never watched her video before. So I decided to, hey, if you guys really want me to review their math, sure, why not? Oh, sorry. I clicked recording way before I shouldn't show that. So yeah, this is basically Edgar of metamaterial, and I dig a lot of financial statements for work and for everything. So this is literally what I do. Well, not really for right now the work that I do, but I've been doing this for a long time anyways. So let's watch her video and see what is going on. I don't want to be confrontational or anything. I'm not debunking anything. I'm just doing a reaction video on someone else's math, and hopefully her math is great, and you guys have a really great position there that will make you money. But if I let me be completely honest with you, I literally have zero holdings of this company. So if you guys are saying that I'm shorting it, I am not. And if you guys are saying that I'm just a shill, I'm not getting paid to do this, I'm just doing it from the generosity of my heart. Because a lot of my subscribers and Discord members really want to know this because they're back holders. So here you go. Let's just watch this.
Because Meta released their amended 10K, which talked primarily about the Hazel project, which for some reason was left out of the previous 10K. And maybe they forgot to add it in and they're like, whoops-a-doodle. But they included this one report about it, which makes me want to go.
Oh, sorry, I have to cut this because the reason why Meta released its 10K late is because due to a auditing complication. So if you go look at their notification of the inability to file, one of the things that it tells you to go to is you have to go to the section where, and I know like this person called Roller Pigeon probably don't read 10Ks or 10Qs or any financial statements for a living, which in my case I technically do, so I understand like how it really works. So in terms of how it works is, if you go look at the auditing section, if you go look at forward-looking statement, there's an auditing section. Sorry, I'm doing a lot of things on the fly because I was gonna do this a little bit later for you guys so that you guys are understanding. So in this auditing report, the entire audit report highlighted two things. So one thing is, so do I mean my notepad? So one thing is TXT. So one thing is metamaterial have sort of like a implied material misunderstanding, or I can't say misunderstanding, or sort of like more like a material functional, basically have internal control issues. It means as an investor, it is very hard, or it's almost impossible for us to determine their actual financial standing based on the financial statements that they provide. And it's actually highlighted in their basis of opinions and critical audit matters. And the reason why they delay their filing is not because they forgot to include all of the oil proceedings. In reality, is because A, it's really hard to do an audit on oil asset, and B is because as we know from the previous audit information that we gained from this, is it's really hard for the auditors to really audit the actual validity of the appraisal for all of these oil projects. And the financial staff at metamaterial fail to provide a qualitative or a quality internal control system for the auditors to process. Therefore, a lot of the information posted for their financial statements are deemed as unreliable by the auditors. So technically speaking, by the end of the release of this old document, the audit is already quote unquote technically complete. It is MetaMaterial's job to change their financial statement to match auditors' suggestions. Otherwise, they're going to get reported. So in this case, if we go back to the notification of inability to timely file the report, you'll realize that there are actually a lot of components that are missing. So if we read it aloud, you will see that as we well disclosed in more detail in the 10K, the company's management concluded that the company's internal control over financial reporting was not sufficient as of last fiscal year. Due to material weakness in internal control over financial reporting, and due to such material weakness, the company's disclosure controls and procedures were not effective as of 2021, which is last fiscal year. Because of those material weakness and so the delay in completing a company accounting order for Form 10K, including accounting work, blah, 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 the company are basically obligated to finish the reporting in, well, presumably the next 15 calendar days, but they delayed for another month. That means MetaMaterial actually need to pay the SEC for a late filing fee, which disclosure were actually not included in the new 10K, which they probably will do it in the next quarter, in the next year. So we see a lot of delayed financial reporting here, which is sort of like a red flag for those of you who really believe that there's transparency in this company, which I totally don't believe there's a transparency. I might even think there might be some level of financial fraud that is a little bit more subjective depending on which auditor is auditing this company. And if we go back to look at Royal Pigeon's video, the document that she showed is actually in the appendix or reference letter in the new 10K. And her focus is that she's trying to say that the new 10K is really focused on the oil appraisal, but in reality, the new 10K is trying to basically fix a lot of holes that were presented in the old report. And oil is one of the things that you guys need to have sort of like put more attention onto this. And hopefully she catch a lot of the details that were highlighted in the new 10K, which I will cover. And in terms of the Hazel project, it's actually a negative return project in terms of how the math goes. So let's see how she did all of these math.
Is the audit done? I want to say yes, because why did they choose to release it now? And if you look on the date of this letter, that date's very recent. I think the audit's possibly done, so I'm going to say maybe. Step 1 might be complete. The next step you'll see is, SEC says, okay, we may or may not hear about that. And then you're going to see like a S1. And about the same time, the S1, you might see an 8K from Meta. That's
okay, let's clarify. So basically, the time when you file an S1 is for public offerings, right? So, I don't want to grill her for anything because she clearly doesn't work in this industry. Is in order for them to file an F1, they have to have a validified financial statement. Let's just presume that this new 10K amendment is validified by the SEC and there's no, ongoing other investigation or whatever, and everything is going forward. And they confirm that they want to spin off on the new oil company as a public company. This is when they're going to file the S1 for that company. So then in that S1, you will see detailed information on oil appraisal and all this kind of stuff. But the problem with that is the probability of that S1 becoming validified or becoming valid is you have to go past 4 processes that proposed by the SEC. And I don't think they're going to be able to pass that material test or whatever you call this, right? So I don't think that's going to happen, but Roller Pigeon is entitled to her opinion, and S1 is not the next step, considerably speaking. It will probably be on something else in the range of a prospect sort of thing. It's not really gonna be an S1, and they have to pay more fees to, you know, NASDAQ or whatever listing agency that they're gonna decide to do the spinoff. So we're not gonna see that in the next 3 or 5 or even 6 months, depending on how the process goes.
What I think usually that happens, you'll see an 8K. But Meta made the amended 10K today, and it had the discussion on it about the Hazel project. Now, unfortunately, this is where you have both good news and bad news. So let's deal with the bad news, is that it's not worth that much. 1M, again, as Elephant Analytics pointed out, 1M does indicate 1,000. 2M's means a million, but 1M does mean 1,000. And so it's with that this isn't that much. You know, it's only worth like $2.8 million net present value. So it's very disheartening. And if you were to math that out into like an actual dividend with 74% interest and 165 million shares, you would get like a penny a share. It's very low. It's very small.
Alright, let's keep this video short. So I think she missed something on the Hazel project. The net present value of the Hazel project is actually negative. So let me show you guys something. Or actually, let's just keep watching. I think she's gonna do some math. Wait, right. I forgot, right? The whole purpose of this is to show her math. Well, let's see.
Net present value of these wells was, remember, this is in millions, so thousands would, or this is in thousands. So this would be, okay. So if you have reserve-wise, according to this study, this appraisal, 2.896 million essentially. And Torchlight gets 74% of that. So that's our revenue interest is 74% in that. And then you multiply 74% times the net present value and you get, you know, 1.997 million. Again, this is given in thousands. Times the holdback dividend of 0.9 is 1.797 million. And then you divide that by 165 million. And you're left with, guess what? Just over a penny. That's a penny. That's not much, right? That's like nothing. It's bust. Now, there might be some teensy tiny oil company that would love to have.
Or as I said before, Hazel project actually worth less than a penny. It's actually a negative return project. I don't really want to grill on the math right here, but I would just give you guys, I would just show you guys something and you guys will realize, oh, maybe you're right. So here's the thing, right? If you go to the new amended 10K, you will realize that there's one section on oil and gas reserves, and they talk about the MP10 value. The present value of Hazel project is 2.897 million, which Roller Pigeon kindly pointed out, right? But the interesting thing is, if you read after that, reference table below, the reserve calculation as prepared by the engineer does not include consideration of company's obligation to assign revenue from Hazel wells to MHP, totaling approximately $5 million. The company have granted MHP the option to acquire the Hazel project in exchange for their conducting and paying for developmental activities sufficient to maintain Hazel's lease. So what does it mean is, right now, the appraisal for the land is let's just say $2.9 million. But the cost of appraising and to reach the point that the land is worth $2.9 million, they have to pay another company $5 million because MHP, which is the company that does all of the rigging and test welling and all those kind of stuff, are entitled to approximately $5 million of revenue. That means in order for this company to be willing to acquire Hazel at $2.8 million, the Hazel project has to be worth at least $7.8 million. Okay, so this is simple math, right? Do I have to write it out? I probably do, right? So basically, Okay, so Hazel worth 2.9 mil. For Hazel to worth 2.9 mil, Meta needs to pay MHP 5 mil. That makes the total return on investment equals to 2.9 minus 5 mil equals 1.1 mil. So negative 1.1 mil is actually the net present value of right now, right? Net present value right now. I'm not making this up. This is actually on their official to the most official document that is passed on by the SEC. And what is worth of that is net cash reserve of expense from Hazel Wells for 2020 for the period after termination of option agreement totaled $147,000. That means the actual distributable working interest for Hazel project based on the testing well is only 147K on the year for the year ended 2021. What does that mean? That means you need to scale your operation on this land by 10x to reach your actual, wait, yes, my math is right. So that would go to 1.47 mil, right? So in order to reach the capacity for the land to be worth at 2.9 mil, right? Because how Roller Pitcher understand this is she thinks that you know, the land worth 2.9 mil is based on the oil reserve, the barrels of oil that preserve under the land. But in reality, how oil appraisal works is you need to consider the workable, basically the developmental cost of working these oil barrels plus the amount of oil barrels reserves that are reserved underground. Basically, the value of the oil minus developmental cost minus potential natural loss or waste during production. So if you do that math, the Hazel project is actually even worse than that. That means your actual, you have to scale it 10 times to make 1.47 revenue of oil. That means your actual net present value is negative 1.1 million minus, which is plus 1.47 million, which makes Hazel project a negative 2.57 million project. And I know, you know, she later on go and I think, what does she say next now? Sorry, I need to turn this.
It amounts to like pennies. So dividend wise, it's not much, but if you do apply that 2.8 million or whatever to other things, like let's say the Oro Grande, you know, that could pay some people. That could at least develop some things for the Oro Grande. Not even a well's worth, but it's something. Again, there's not too much, sadly, in the Flying Bee ranches of the Hazel project.
Sorry, I don't think I can keep watching this because when she missed this detail that we highlighted, essentially this negative $1.1 million or the $5 million that Meta actually owned on, you know, MHP have to come out of Oro Grande projects. That means in order for Oro Grande projects to be profitable, they have to pay that $5 million from their previous projects first. And then because of other developmental costs, they have to pay the $5 million plus around 2.5 million over here is 7 million. So they're already 7 million in debt. But those are invisible debt because they are not really realized until the sale of the land based on the agreement that they had with this developmental company. And I don't think they are doing business with this company anymore. I think they use a new company for testing wells for Oro Grande product, and it's significantly more expensive. As you can see, developmental projects or developmental costs for Oro Grande projects is 14 million, and they have another $9 million testing well debt that are outstanding based on previous AKs and 10Qs. So technically speaking, if we do the math, in order for the Oro Grande project to be profitable, they have to cover the cost of, you know, doing all the testing wells plus the debt that they own from the previous project. Let's see, 9 million. So how much is that? 19, 28, 30.5. Let's just do the math in here. 14 plus 5 plus 2.5 plus 9. Yeah, 30.5. So in order for Oro Grande project to be merely profitable, it has to be worth more than 30.5 million, or the appraisal value has to be higher than that. Otherwise, everything else would just be, worthless, basically. And a lot of you are thinking that it's worth billions of dollars. It's probably not possible, because if you go to Seeking Alpha, there's a very old appraisal guide on oil land on Torch. He's saying that around the maximum amount of value that Oro Grande will be sold is around $32 million, right? We can scale that to my previous calculation, or the very optimistic calculation of might sell it for $81 million. So even if they sell it for $81 million, you have $50 million worth of outstanding profit. But in reality, it's not really outstanding profit, because they still have outstanding debt from the other project before Hazel project, and they still own working interest debt, leasing operational fees and other fees to agents, or the selling agents, the buying agents, and all those kind of stuff. And I think they also have about $1 million in litigation expenses. So if you deduct all of that, essentially this project doesn't make any money. And if you go back to my previous video, you will realize that it actually doesn't worth that much money. So, but then, you guys love Roller Pigeons, so I'm just going to use Roller Pigeons' assumption. There are 165 million shares out there. So even if we don't pay anyone anything, with the $50 million of excess, return in this case, what did you get per share? You get $0.3 dividend per share. This is the maximum money you will get from this project. And if we go look at MMTLP, it's currently traded around $1 with a trading cost of around half of its initial listing, which is 0.4. That means the actual value of MMTLP right now is 0.6. So it still have a way to go down to $0.3 dividend. But in reality, this is a very horrible investment if we do the math correctly. So yeah, I didn't even do the math full on. I'm just laying out some very obvious assumptions and maybe something that she missed, so it can help you guys. And I will post a 10K review video later on this week. I'm getting a little bit busy for studies and work and everything. So I will see you guys on the upside. And again, I am not a financial advisor. I do not give financial advice. Everything I say on this channel is for shits and giggles. And hopefully this mathematical calculation will help you understand that maybe it is a good idea to look deeper into valuations than what you guys are doing, or taking other people's words as face value without doing all of these maths yourself. So you guys on the upside.